welcome back. We're still trying to resolve our technical difficulties, but so far we have got through with most of it, so we resume our meeting. I have received notice of lateness from MP Peterson. Notification. Sincere condolences to the family of Ms. Maria Bankamper on passing of her brother, Yanchi Molanas. Condolences to the family and friends. And I would also like to wish the Indian diaspora a very happy new year. Are there any other notifications? MP Angelique Rumu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A pleasant good morning to you, Mr. Chairman. Pleasant good morning to the honorable ministers here present and their support staff, and of course to the viewing and listening public and my colleague MPs. I want to, this morning, Mr. Chairman, thank all of the ladies and men that supported the first Women in Leadership Gala, which was held this past weekend. I must say that it was quite an honor to be in the presence of so many talented, intelligent women. And I want to say a special thank you to our Honorable Prime Minister, who gave the opening welcome at this event, and also our Honorable Minister of Justice, who was a part of the panel. This first Women in Leadership Gala, Mr. Chairman, was the first of many, whereby we saw women come together to encourage, uplift, and motivate each other. And one of the key messages brought over, Mr. Chairman, at this event that I thought is very important for us to reiterate this morning is that it is very important for us as leaders, women leaders, leaders in general, to pass on knowledge and experience in order to prepare the next generation to take over. Because if we don't do that, we will be failing our country and the further development thereof. So once again, I want to thank everyone that supported this event and say a sincere thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Angelique Rumu. The next person I see is MP Rolando Bryson. MP Bryson, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to you. Good morning to the Secretary General, to my colleague. Oh, yes. Good morning once again, Mr. Chairman, to the Secretary General, to my colleague members of Parliament, all 8 of us here, the Council of Ministers that are with us here for the budget debate, the members in the Tribune, and the public viewing this meeting. Mr. Chairman, I would like to take the opportunity to first of all thank the many people, my family, my friends, and so many within society for their support and their prayers. As everyone knows, it was a very difficult Friday evening going into Saturday morning for myself, but their prayers and support made it very, very much easier than it could have probably been. It was a shocking moment for me, everything that has taken place and transpired on that day, but I am very happy and thank God that I am here, especially today, to handle what I consider the most important piece of legislation that the Parliament must handle every year. The investigators are doing their job. This is the system that they have, and we have, of course, to understand that there is a judicial process, which I hope will continue, and I hope for a positive outcome. I do want to also say something that is very important that I would like everyone to know. Oftentimes in Sint Maarten, we see these sort of fake Facebook and Instagram accounts, especially from politicians, sometimes as business people as well. But I would like to ask everyone to take those especially seriously. Particularly in my case, there is a fake account, one that has most recently been active. It is at Rolando Bryson with 2 I's. And I want to reiterate to everyone, the only social media that I own is at Rolando Bryson with 1 I on Instagram. It is Rolando Bryson on Facebook and at Rolando Bryson on Twitter. There is never a moment that I would ever solicit or contact anyone from any other social media for any sort of illicit purposes. I want to make that very clear to everyone. And I will be putting out a press statement in this regard, where we will ask anyone, if you have received any such messages or any sort of reports, going forward as well, for any member of the United People's Party for that matter, but for myself in particular, at info@theupparty.sx. We are busy right now. That domain should be up. In the meantime, you can also email it to me personally, rolandobryson@hotmail.com, which is also my only personal email address that I use. So I would like to, again, thank everyone. I'm happy to be here. We're ready for Budget 2023. We're ready to ensure that we bring the means available for the people of Sint Maarten to be able to continue and function. And that is why I'm happy once again for all the love, prayers, and support from everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Bryson. The next person I see is MP George Pantoflet. MP George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to the chair, my colleagues in Parliament, of course, feed honorable ministers, those that are sitting in the tribune, those that are viewing. Mr. Chairman, I want to join you also in wishing and extending my deepest sympathy and condolences to the Molanas family on the passing of their brother, husband. You know what I realized, Mr. Chairman, lately, that when you look in the newspaper on the back page, you see that there are many persons today who you know that are passing. And I mean, it is something that you never get accustomed to, and I'm sure that at this moment the family is going through a very difficult time. So I want to say to the family, much strength. Again, focus on the things that you know that are good, that you experience with him. And we all have our challenges, Mr. Chairman, but when it comes to death, I believe that we should be able to stand with those who are going through this difficult time. I'm giving as much support as possible. So again, Mr. Chairman, my deepest sympathy and condolences to the Molanas family. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP George Pantoflet. I have MP William Marlin. MP Marlin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to you. Good morning to the Council of Ministers, my colleagues in Parliament, the various support staff, visitors in the Public Tribune, and those listening at home. Mr. Chairman, I would like to, on behalf of the National Alliance faction, welcome back in our midst, even though we didn't miss him for any meeting, but welcome back our buddy and friend and leader of the UP party, MP Rolando Bryson. It was a shocking moment for, I think, Sint Maarten on the whole, a trying one for his family, I'm sure, and his loved ones, and we are happy that the outcome is what it is. As shocking as it was, as shocking as it ended, because it was like, now you see me, now you don't, and then here I'm back, the lights are on. So we are happy for that, and we also pray for a positive ending to this saga, because it is, of course, a difficult moment. Mr. Chairman, also, I would like to join in extending sympathies to the family of the now late Jan Molanas, brother of the former minister and former MP Maria Boncampo Molanas, and brother-in-law to the suspended MP Toncho Boncampo. For me personally, I have known Jan for many years. We were in St. Joseph's School together in 1973. I was his teacher, and he was one of the students in my class. And I've had some very fond memories. One of them was that he believed, I think, that, you know, all teachers spoke only Dutch and they couldn't speak English, no matter the color of their skin. And Jan was mumbling things under his breath in English. And I asked him to refrain, but I spoke in Dutch as it was the 5th grade. And he continued believing that the teacher couldn't speak English. And we had our moments about it, and lo and behold, it turned out that I moved to Saunders and was living just 2 houses away from them. So again, our deepest sympathy to the Molanas family, and I thank you for this opportunity. And of course, Mr. Chairman, to the Indian community and yourself and the rest of the Indian community, Happy New Year. You guys have been busy these days with all kind of colors, and we wish you all the best. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Marlin. Next person I see is MP Richardson. MP Richardson, you have the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to my colleagues. Good morning to the members and their staff. Good morning to the people of Sint Maarten. Mr. Chairman, I would like to take this opportunity to wish my colleague congratulations, Ms. Angelique Rumeau, on her first Ladies and Women Gala dinner. I understood it was a success, and congratulations to you. I hope it will be an annual one. So hope that everything will be okay and continue the good works with the ladies of the country and other neighboring islands. On another note, I also would like to take this opportunity to welcome my colleague, Mr. Bryson Mack in Parliament, even though he did not miss any meetings. I know these are trial times for anyone and their family. I can tell you, I prayed for him, and I also prayed for him on Friday at the church in Curaçao, near the cricket field, near to Causiles. And Friday night, I had a vision where he was out of prison. And I remember telling my colleague at the Saturday church service for Aruba Day and the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Minister Samuel, that I dreamt last night he was out of prison. So, not out of prison. So I am happy of that. I also have not prayed for you alone. I've prayed for practically everyone who had these kind of issues, and I'm a praying person, so I want all of those families that hear politicians and so forth, I've prayed for them because it's not an easy time when you go through that. On another note, I would like to congratulate the Indian community also on their New Year's Day. I have been part of the Indian community for a number of years. That have taken part in my event at Maho also for a number of years. This is Maarten Multicultural Extravaganza. So I would like to congratulate them also on the new year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Richardson. Thank you for your notifications. We have as agenda points for this public meeting. Point 1, incoming documents. Point 2, national ordinance stipulating the budget of the country for the year 2023. And for the year 2023 under IS document 352, correct? And IS document 352/2022-23 dated December. I would like to adjourn the meeting for some correction. Meeting adjourned for 2 minutes. Welcome back. We have as agenda points for the public meeting, number 1, incoming documents. Number 2, national ordinance stipulating the budget of the country for the year 2023, National Ordinance Budget 2023 under IS 166/2022-23 dated March 6, 2023. Agenda point 3, ratification of the decision list of the Interparliamentary Kingdom Consultation, IPKO, held from February 28 to March 3, 2023 in Willemstad, Curaçao, under IS 543/2022-23, dated March 9, 2023. It is good to note that this meeting was originally scheduled for Tuesday, March 21st, 2023, but could not take place due to technical difficulties. We go over to the agenda point 1. All members have received the list of incoming documents and the proposals for further handling under IS/424 until IS/560, the parliamentary year 2022-23. Are there any comments or proposals on the list as presented? There's no comment. If there are no comments, the list and the proposal for the handling are approved. We go to the agenda point 2. Parliament received the national ordinance stipulating the budget of the country for the year 2023 on March 6, 2023. All members have received a copy of the draft national ordinance, a hard copy digitally linked via email and P drive. The budget 2023 is also available on our website. A Central Committee meeting was held on March 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th on the subject matter, in which the members of Parliament posed their questions and the ministers answered these questions. The members also had the opportunity to pose points of clarification to the ministers. A report has been made on the deliberation in the Central Committee and was sent to the government as well as to the members. The government answered this report with a so-called note following the final report under IS/610/2022-23, dated March 21st, 2023. Today, in the public meeting handling of the draft budget 2023, all ministers will give a brief presentation concerning their ministry. When the ministers are done with their presentation, I will give the floor to the members of Parliament to pose their questions on the budget, after which the ministers will answer the questions posed by the members of Parliament. It is important to note that for the budget debate, the speaking time for the members of Parliament is set at 90 minutes in the first round and 45 minutes in the second round. It is important to note that we received a notice of absence from the Ministry of Romy for the budget handling due to him attending a conference of the United Nations on the Water for Sustainable Development. The event is co-hosted by the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and the Minister of Romy will be part of the Kingdom delegation. Subsequent to this travel, the Minister will be attending the Sint Maarten Reconstruction, Recovery, and Resilience Trust Fund Steering Committee, where key projects such as housing project and the wastewater management project will be further discussed. I now give the floor to the Minister of Finance, Mr. Ardwell Irion, to give some introductory remarks and presentation on the budget. Minister, you have the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to my colleagues. Good morning to the members of Parliament. Good morning to the viewing public. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to first start off by also wishing my former colleague, Ms. Marie Bonkamper, condolences and sincere condolences to her and her family on the passing of her brother, and wish her much strength during this time. And Mr. Chairman, I will start with the budget, the contents. And Mr. Chairman, last week during the Central Committee meeting, I heard some comments that also resonated with me. And one of the comments were that basically the 2023 budget, the comment that came back a lot was basically a cleanup budget, and I actually agreed with that. It's a budget that basically we have cleaned up a lot of the mess from the years gone by. And if you're a sick person, right, and you continue to put toxic stuff in your body, it takes a while before you get to the healthy stage again. And I consider this budget on that way. It's not a perfect budget, right, because there's a lot of toxic stuff, a lot of poison that has been in the budget for the last decade. And now we're on the path to clean that up on our way to creating a budget that we all can be proud of. In addition to that, Mr. Chairman, listening to other meetings also again, I also like to touch on, for example, the Ministry of Justice and the comments and concerns about the officers being paid. Again, this is a similar situation, Mr. Chairman. The situation that the Minister of Justice, Ms. Anna Richardson, finds herself in is not one that she created, is one that she is fixing and will be fixed. And yes, the officers will be paid this year. We have budgeted for it, not just this year, but also last year. So the concerns of officers not being paid is a moot point for me, because I know one thing for sure, that the money will be budgeted, and the money is budgeted, and they will be paid. In addition to that, as has been stated over and over and over again, all right, there's no minister in here that doesn't want to see the officers being paid, Mr. Chairman. If it was possible for us to pay January 1st, we would have already been paid. But at the end of the day, we cannot pay without a legal basis, because the same parliament body will come and ask us next time, how you pay the officers if there's no legal basis, and what law did you use to make this payment happen, right? So at the end of the day, I think the minister made it clear already that we are following the process. All the necessary steps are being taken, from even going back a step further, Mr. Chairman, to making sure that every officer who's promised a certain position, right, are placed in their position so that they are rightfully paid, Mr. Chairman. A lot of things that were done in the past to these officers by former ministers, expectations that were created by former ministers, is unfortunate in the way it was handled, but it is being cleaned up and being worked on. Mr. Chairman, why this budget is important? I'll skip over the mission and vision, as we have done that last time in CC. But why this budget is important is because for the last, again, I believe since 2014, we haven't had capital expenditure for the country of Sint Maarten. We weren't able to properly invest in Sint Maarten, our infrastructure and roads, the schools. We have justice, we have tax legislation, ICT. The Minister of Theatre also going to a few other things, the village, the vendors market, that the MPs have to walk past every single day. The comments already came up in the past about the vendors market. All of that is in this budget today. Not only that, the budget has been basically verified, the CAPEX has been basically verified by the CFT in terms of how to properly elucidate it, something that wasn't done in the past. We are also under our debt to GDP ratio, so the potential funding possibility is there, unlike previous years. Mr. Chairman, when we look at education and the CAPEX of education, for example, we see the Rahu village that since Hurricane Irma has been damaged. That's inside of there. We see the schools, and VSL is different. But I think in terms of CAPEX, we see how much of the investments that are within the budget that once this budget is approved will be worked on, because the plans already have been made. It isn't a wish list that has been presented in the past. This is a budget where proper plans are in place, elucidations are in the budget, and the proper procedures dealing with CFT and so forth have all been assessed. Mr. Chairman, as was mentioned in the CC last week, we'll go through now some highlights from the Ministry of Finance. One of the key highlights that you see on the screen here, and that was mentioned not just by the ministry, but also by CFT, was our efforts in collecting back payments. Again, not an issue that we created, but an issue we have to fix. an issue that we are fixing. The backlogs that we are collecting isn't the backlogs of 2023, 2022. They aren't backlogs because of COVID-19 or just Hurricane Irma. They're backlogs dating before that. So the efforts that we made between the Ministry of Rummy and Ministry of Finance to create a task force to deal with this backlog of ERFPAC has resulted in us collecting millions in gillers and backlog payment, also opening up communication to the public. We've dealt with situations that just need communication. There's individuals that just no communication was ever handled with them on the process and payment and so forth. And also on our aspect, also, Mr. Chairman, of sometimes the invoice is not going to the right companies, but also because the companies never updated their address and so forth. So this, between the Ministry of Finance and Rummy, started our efforts. Key highlight for us was a highlight that started within the pandemic. Key highlight for us was a highlight that started within the pandemic. COVID-19 had everyone at home, Mr. Chairman. And then we decided as a ministry, as a government, that we need to continue to help the population, right? That while they're home, to give them the tools and skills for the world that is coming after. Because we, at some point in time, we even thought this is sort of if anybody watched a zombie movie, it's a zombie apocalypse. We don't know what's coming after, right? So we were making sure that our population is ready for what's coming after, right? And we started a program supported by the entity SMDF, where over 2,800 courses were given. Currently, we have over 300 active learners. 14,000 lessons were completed, and over 800 course hours. And also 64% of the current learners have completed 50% of their courses. The Learn Smart initiative, Mr. Chairman, will continue for 2023, and we look forward to participants continue to apply, and we continue to grow this program. Another key highlight for the Ministry of Finance in 2022 is our National Youth Pitch. The National Youth Pitch competition was organized by the Ministry of Finance and Islandpreneur, and was designed to increase financial literacy among the high schools. In the CC, Mr. Chairman, we had MP Angelique Rameau had a question regarding the importance of financial literacy and what the government is planning to do to continue this. And as I stated before, which I had a date wrong, through you, Mr. Chairman, MP Angelique Rameau, I also stated then that we are taking this a step further in this a national youth pitch, which we will continue this year and hope that it continues every year. But we also want to establish a financial literacy week, which will be the 3rd week of May, Mr. Chairman. And this week, we'll continue to educate the public on financial literacy, about taxes, businesses, and so forth. We have a whole plan together, working in collaboration, continue our collaboration with Alipreneur. So, and coming from the National Youth Pitch, we go into SMEs, which I believe is, the National Youth Pitch is the groundwork, the foundation of establishing entrepreneurship, building entrepreneurship capacity at a very young age. And the ministry continues to support SMEs through the Enterprise Pro project, where we have not just supported, but also helped guide the rules and the what we call the POM on making sure that the Enterprise Pro project meets our demands on Sint Maarten and the needs that we need to fit on Sint Maarten. And we continue to do that, and we have continued to adapt this Enterprise Pro project. For example, the project started off only for existing businesses. And with our support and influence through the government, we've established that even new entities could apply. We've also expedited the processes for new businesses. We've also supported credits through the Small Business Academy to prepare new entrepreneurs, sole proprietors, micro, medium, and small businesses to be able to apply for financing and get financing, but not only get financing, be able to succeed long-term, Mr. Chairman, beyond the typical statistic of how fast companies basically go in arrears. Corporate governance, which I believe has been a key word within the last 2 to 3 years, given all what has transpired among our government entities over the last few years. We thought it important to not just talk about we don't have anybody to go on boards and we only could get people from outside, but start with training our young professionals at an early age to be able to sit on these boards, understand what it takes to sit on these boards by trained professionals. This is a almost 9-month program, and not only be trained, but they also get to take part in board meetings at the entities. So this corporate governance training, I believe, something very important, and I'm 100% sure we will see members from this trainingship in our future boards and know and can be proud that it wasn't just persons that be selected, but persons that went through proper training and understand the importance of good corporate governance and what it really means. But in the Ministry of Finance, we typically say after the F, it's the I, and the I stands for innovation. And outside, and part of that innovation for us comes what we believe is online payment. I saw an article today from the Daily Herald that stated that 17% of the island population is unbanked. And having these statistics in place, we decided as a government, through the Ministry of Finance, to create an online payment similar to what they call in Holland, Tiki, or in the US, Cash App and Venmo. Typically, you will see these innovations coming from the private sector, but since we don't see that being expedited fast enough, the government decided to take the first steps in this, and we hope to have this launch, the first draft to be launched in June, Mr. Chairman, where persons will be able to make online payments even significantly faster, like the vehicle tax payment that you should be paid, should have been paid already, and other payments within government just by paying with your phone, tap in, transferring money between phones and so forth. Some other key highlights would be the ending of the 12.5% ordinance. We came to Parliament last year, and we told the Parliament, the Prime Minister, myself, that we will be ending the ordinance in January. We stuck to all our agreements that we made, and we believe that through the ending of this ordinance, we have gone back to where we were, and in the benefit of not just the public sector, but also with the government-owned entities. We were also able to establish and implement the CRS. We've also able to start the process of our financial management system, our backlogs. We've dealt with the financial statements. The backlog, again, you see, is a key trend within Budget 2023, and this government is dealing with the backlogs, Mr. Chairman. 2017 to 2020, annual statements were presented to Parliament and approved, Mr. Chairman. And the financial management, we've established the fact that we know for sure that in government, we believe there are at least, in the Ministry of Finance, at least 10 different softwares, some very, very dated, one of them even being built in DOS, which is almost 41 years old, with the last update was in 2000. That should show you how old our software is. We are in that process of establishing a new software, which we have already identified through a proper, transparent process. And hopefully by January next year, we can start a tour for that and have the workload of our staff that is, I want to thank them again for dealing with this software that sometimes takes 45 minutes just to load, right? Again, lack of access, lack of proper management in the past, and lack of will of understanding that we can't continue to use software such as Preface over the last 10 years is why we have, again, decided to deal with an issue of the past and prepare us for the future. Our policy priorities, Mr. Chairman, for 2023 will be financial management. The ministry strives to continue receiving improved audits, opinions on the financial statements. The ministry will continue with initiatives that will positively contribute towards realizing this. And these tasks are linked to the implementation of our ERP system, which I just mentioned just now, the cleanup of our administration, and the reorganization process. The revision of our tax and modernization of our tax administration system. Also, our tax system is dated. We've had already the meetings on tax already, and this is one of our key policies for 2023 that we will continue to do. And the mitigation of risk of natural disasters. The goal is to increase Sint Maarten's financial resilience through a combination of collateral arrangements, such as insurance, participation in the regional collective financial safety nets, and building adequate reserves. When we look at the budget 2023 versus 2022, the budget for 2023 is a balanced budget. The estimated income and expenses are budgeted at about 495 million guilders. When comparing the budget 2023 with the budget 2022 and the actuals 2022, we note the following. In 2022, we saw an increase in economic activities on the island. With regard to budget of 2022, the actual income for the year 2022 is 48 million guilders higher than budgeted 2022. In 2022, we saw an increase in the economic activities. However, there was still some uncertainty as to the economy would have fully recovered in 2022 after the pandemic. When comparing expenses, we see the opposite, as the actual expenses are 41 million guilders lower than budgeted. The lower actual expenses, however, are also a product of the uncertainty of the evolvement of the pandemic. In addition to that, it's also due to the budget being too high. The budgeted revenue in 2023 compared to the actuals 2022 has increased with approximately 27 million guilders, which is a 5.8% increase, and is mainly due to expected growth in GDP and initiatives to increase revenue such as Airbnb and tax compliance. The budgeted expenses in 2023 compared to the actual 2022 has increased with approximately 16 million guilders, which is a 3.3% increase, and is partly due to vacancies which are budgeted for, but which are not all accounted for in 2022, as not all key vacancies have been filled. It is also partly due to goods and services being partially due to inflation. This is a slide, Mr. Chairman, when we could look at budget 2023 versus the previous years. As I mentioned before, you see that budget 2023 is budgeted. The blue is expenses. The light blue is income. And here we could look at the main expenses per economic category, 2023 versus the previous years, versus, 2022. Again, we continue to look at the main expenses per the economic category, Mr. Chairman. And this slide is just a visual of what I previously mentioned, above which is that increase in expenses compared to 2022 of 3.3% are mainly due to the increase in personal expenses and goods and services. For budget 2023, if you look at the capital expenditure, 48% of the CapEx goes to the Ministry of Economy, 28% to the Ministry of Finance, 13% to the Ministry of Justice, 7% to the Ministry of ECYS, 2% to General Affairs, and the rest 2% goes to the other ministries in general. As I mentioned in my introduction, here is the investments above 1 million guilders, and we see hardware and software for ICT, for Justice, the IBP, the first phase of the prison, the sport facilities, John Lomley Center, plus the main roads, hard surfacing of roads, and the expansion of the sewage network and vehicles for the ministries. Mr. Chairman, I have come to the end of my presentation for the government and for the Ministry of Finance. We went into details in this presentation in the CC. I look forward to any questions that the members of Parliament may have, and I look forward to having the budget approved as soon as possible so that we can start with the necessary investments that we need to have in this country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Minister of Finance. I would like to adjourn the meeting for 3 minutes to change the PowerPoint presentation, and we go over to Minister of TIAT next. Meeting adjourned for 3 minutes. Welcome back. I give the floor to the Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport, and Telecommunication, Mr. Lambrix, to give some introductory remarks on the budget. Mr. Lambrix, you have the floor.
Good morning, honorable members of parliament. Good morning, Kafia. Good morning, chair. Good morning to the listening public via social media and the radio. My budget presentation today is just to clarify some stuff that came up in the Central Committee meeting, which one was the Phillipsburg Marketplace. I put now what the total is. So the total is exactly 1,044,427 guilders. The funding for the project will come from the CapEx, as mentioned, vendor village. I have made the adjustment via note of an aanwijziging to have it reflect the correct name, which is the Phillipsburg Marketplace. The written commitment was also asked from Royal Caribbean if we had that. Yes, we do. The amount is for $350,000 US, equivalent to 630,000 guilders. After the funds have been used from the CapEx to pay for the marketplace and the commitment of Royal Caribbean to finish it off, we will have a remainder left. That remainder will be shown in another slide, how it will be used. Here we have a picture of what the marketplace is scheduled to look like, in case you haven't seen. This is a short little video also to highlight it a little bit so you can see how it will look from an overview. This is some images of the inside, how it would look. It would have some seating also for people that want to have a snack. And hopefully we can diversify some of the products being sold within the marketplace so they can also have food and beverages, different health snacks, instead of just souvenirs. This is a little walkthrough of how the inside would look. So each booth would have their own section. They would have a rolling shutter in the front. They'll be able to store their merchandise within the store that they have or the section that they have, so they don't have to take it home every day, making it more of an ease for the marketplace sellers. As mentioned, the remaining funds from Royal Caribbean will be used for the garbage bins. As mentioned, the price is $33,490 for 80 bins. And then we have also the concrete benches, which is 180 concrete benches. The amount is mentioned, 198,000 guilders, leaving us with a little remaining funds of a little over 4,000 guilders. We have some projects that we are looking at to start within this year as soon as possible, hopefully. These are projects that are also very effective already in other countries and other islands, such as the British Virgin Islands, even in Saba, even our neighbor right here on the island, the French side of the island, Sint Maarten. This is basically just to curb everyone dropping anchors everywhere within our waters. Sometimes this causes, which I will show on the other slide, serious situations where boats are anchored within a channel that is being used in the evening hours. It can cause collisions, can cause certain other hindrances. So I've mentioned within the Simsumé Lagoon, we would place about 50 mooring balls. On the outside of the Simsumé Lagoon along the coastline, we would have approximately 30 balls, and within the Great Bay Harbor, another 30, equaling 110 mooring balls. I did a little calculation of the total amount of the mooring balls by the days of the year and took percentages to show what the revenue that can be generated from that. At the bottom also highlighted, it shows the government coffers to gain a minimum of 135,000 guilders up to 542,000 guilders, with concession fees that would have to be paid for such a service being rendered. In case anyone is not familiar with what a mooring ball is, here is a little anatomy of the mooring ball. So it'll basically be a concrete block, sand screws to hold it down into place so it doesn't shift. It would have chains and shackles going up to the surface where there's a ball, where instead of dropping anchor, damaging the ocean bed or the sea floor, you would basically then tie onto the ball, avoiding any further damage to our ecosystem, which was also something brought up in the past when I just got in. when I spoke about the bridge widening, which was a little bit misunderstood, but this was also part of what was brought up, why we are not doing certain things to protect the ecosystem. So this is a good example of what we are looking at and what we are planning to do. Here we have a concept idea of where the moorings will be placed within the lagoon. All the red dots basically signify, show where the moorings will be placed. This is an idea for the outside Simpson/Pelican area within the bay, the same. And then we have for Great Bay also the same. As mentioned, the channels are a serious concern. Marker buoys that boats have to use to enter in and out of the bay. A lot of times boats just drop anchor within those areas, and it does cause quite a confusion, especially in Great Bay where the water taxis operate, a lot of movement with the marinas, and then cruise ship passengers having to be in between, jet skis. So this would sort of simplify the whole situation and make sure that everything stays proper, and we also actually collect for these boats being docked or anchored or moored in our bays. Lottery booths and location fees. It was also a serious topic. It was also one of mine when I got into office, so I was already working on it. We did have some publications drafted, and they're already actually out in the media, addressing certain situations such as the validity in the time that it's valid for a lottery license. So we are seeking, ways when we renew them and people come in to add certain clauses to it, so that the lottery booths are, having fees attached to them and not having as much lottery booths as anyone who wishes to place, but more put a restriction on how many are allowed within certain districts or per district, so we don't have it over in the community. This was the reminder that was posted. As mentioned, this was to advise everyone to check if the licenses are up to date, making sure to remind them that they're only for 5 years at a time and that they do have to be renewed when the period is up. There's also fines attached to it. Of course, we're putting these publications out and notices out. This is to give people, companies and businesses a fair chance to rectify the situation before we start actual inspections, which we are planning to start on the 2nd of April. We have the proposed bus terminal, which I put in the Central Committee meeting also. It is not part of the budget, but it is a plan that we are really looking forward to trying to execute. I thought I would share how we would look for the funding for this plan, and these are some of the topics that we have. There's one missing, but I will still mention it at the end so that we know that one also. One is to seek the possibilities of other third parties or cruise lines, cruise industry partners, tourism partners to help fund this project. 2 is to seek the possibility of the Port of Sint Maarten or other entities to contribute. 3 is the mooring ball system, which I showed what we can generate from it, and we can hopefully apply some of that to these sort of projects. And number 4 was with the NRPB, we had a beautification beautification development, something within the NRPB. It was mentioned by one of the MPs also. I am looking also into that to see how we can further revitalize it or restart it so that we can piggyback off of how far we got with it already and continue to try to get this funding organized. Here we have some photos and some small videos of what the bus terminal would look like. So it's not 100% clear, but the first slot on the left where the buses are would be for tour bus drop-off pickups. The second one the same. The third one on the right would be for public transportation. This is a small video showing it. That's the RBC Bank. That is the first slot. The blue bus would be tour bus. Second one would be tour bus, and the last one would be for public transportation. Here we have another one from the back. And the terminal will have sufficient place to drop off, pick up, shaded areas, seating areas, so that if anyone wants to wait or meet, they can also do so in that area. There's one more showing the public transportation pulling out. Sorry, I didn't have the correct size of bus, but it is for public transportation. increased controls with the theater inspection. So some of it that was brought up was the plastic ban enforcement. We are planning, as Minister of Justice said, together to tackle this and make sure that the inspectors and team goes out and starts to enforce this. We would also put it out in a publication to remind everyone, of course, before we start tackling it head on. Enforcing the controls of businesses and establishments, again, to curb what their licenses are being used for and what is actually intended for. The basket of goods, to continue looking at that, seeing how we can keep the prices down and what we can add and what we can put a maximum price to. And then enforcing new proposed clauses, such as the booths are not allowed to be placed and operated, lottery booths that is, in certain areas, like I said, within school areas, maybe to have them addressed and not open during school hours, a certain time after schools close. So those are some of the inspections that we're planning. This was a reminder for what Mr. Christopher Emmanuel, MP Emmanuel, brought up. It was a serious concern of mine also, so I'm very happy that he did bring it up. It is concerning the slot machines within the various districts. As mentioned, it was also a concern of mine, so we're already working on it. When he mentioned it, actually, it was for me to finalize and to ensure that the publication would be perfect and go out, that we have everybody notified. Basically, it is to remind hotels, guest houses, restaurants, bars, cafes, ice cream parlors, most of the establishments that these slot machines are placed in, that it is against their license ordinance to have these things within their establishments. It is not allowed to have any games of chance within those establishments, any lottery machines, any virtual lottery machines, nothing of that sort. So again, we have put these publications out on the 2nd of April, which is a Monday. We will start enforcing and checking on these to ensure that it is not continued. Initiatives to reduce the cost of air travel between the Dutch. Can't hear me? No? Oh. The Dutch Caribbean islands. We do have a task force that was put in place in November 2022. It's the DCCA, the Dutch Caribbean Cooperation of Airports. They are working on fixing those issues of tackling the problems with the high prices and connectivity. However, when I did some digging into the situation, I came up with a document which is the multilateral liberalization of air transport within the Kingdom of the Netherlands. This was already signed off by my previous or predecessor minister. At the time, that was in 2012, I believe that was Mr. Franklin Myers. He did sign that with the other kingdom partners, where there is an article specifically within the document allowing us to regulate the airfares and ensure that we have no advantage taken basically of the consumer with the rates because of monopoly or because of one single carrier flying that route. So we can probably use this document and further dive into it and probably tackle a lot of the routes between here and Curaçao, possibly even here in the Netherlands, to ensure that we get the rates down. Here is a copy of the document. There's certain important parts. This is the cover page. This is another page of it. This is the article that I mentioned where it says on point 3, intervention by the party shall be limited to, which is exactly the first and the most important topic, the protection of consumers from prices that are excessive due to the abuse of dominant position. So again, that falls with some of the carriers that fly those routes that I mentioned. This is who signed for the documents. It was signed by the Netherlands, it was signed by Aruba, it was signed by Curaçao, and of course our minister at the time, Mr. Franklin Myers. Thank you for your attention and time. I hope it was informative. Any questions? I look forward to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister of Tiat, Mr. Lambrix. I now see Minister of Justice, and she would need some time for the PowerPoint presentation. So we'd like to adjourn for 5 minutes. Meeting adjourned for 5 minutes. Welcome back. I give the floor to the Minister of Justice, Ms. Richardson, to give some introductory remarks on the budget. Minister Richardson, you have the floor.
A pleasant good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of Parliament, Secretary General of Parliament, colleague ministers, my support staff, and those of Parliament, the listening and viewing audience, and of course, a special good morning to all senior citizens. Mr. Chairman, through you, if I could be permitted to first extend my condolences to the family, friends, colleagues, Ministry of Justice, and particularly KPSM for the loss of Officer Van Thijs earlier this week. It is a tragic set of news that we received, and we want to extend our word of condolences and strength to his family, friends, and of course his colleagues. And also, Mr. Chairman, through you, I want to thank my colleague, Minister Artwell Arian, for his opening remarks and statements, giving confirmation and reaffirming the fact that the justice workers will be compensated this year. I think that his words were resounding, and I appreciate the fact that he has given that confirmation and reaffirmation for the justice workers to be aware that at no moment in time should they ever doubt the fact that we are working diligently to be able to meet the expectations and what is rightfully due to the officers and those who are all entitled to. I move on through you, Mr. Chairman, to give some indications of where we are in terms of our budget for this year. The Ministry of Justice is a force consisting of 9 departments charged with upholding law and order on Sint Maarten. The ministry's mission is to create the conditions necessary for maintaining the safety and security of all residents and visitors, while guaranteeing the legal certainty of our community. Planned changes to the LIOL will include the Department of Executive Protection Services and that of the Court of Guardianship. The dynamic management team leading this ministry together with me as Minister of Justice is the Acting Secretary General, Ms. Florence Marlin, Head of Judicial Affairs, Ms. Ramona Ishmael, Chief of Police, Mr. Carl John, Prison Director, Mr. Stephen Carty, Acting Head of Immigration and Border Protection Services, Ms. Angelique Myers, Acting Head of Customs, Mr. Franklin Bernardina, Acting Head of the National Detectives, Ms. Lucy Cachette, Director of the Financial Intelligence Unit, and Ms. Ligia Stella, Head of Court of Guardianship, Ms. Kimberly Duarte Brown. Mr. Chairman, I just want to be able to extend my appreciation to the 9 leadership that I have just announced. I appreciate all that they do, even in our trying, challenging times. They still maintain leadership that we can appreciate as a country. The 2023 policy priorities for the Ministry of Justice are formed within the context of strengthening our house from within to ensure our effectiveness in the execution of our mission. A specific focus on our ministry's personnel and the quality of service provided is a theme that will remain one of our priorities as this ministry's vision and mission is driven from its personnel capacity. While the ministry continues to focus on strengthening the rule of law by focusing on strengthening border supervision, tackling financial and economic crime, and improving our detention system, let me take you on a journey through the Ministry of Justice and the goals of each agency for this financial year. I begin with the Staff Bureau. In 2023 and beyond, a general improvement on the human resources management of our justice personnel is a vital and key priority. This includes enhancing our general personnel affairs, establishing effective and engaging communication channels, and a proper sick leave management. In February 2023, the ministry introduced an intranet platform to ensure our personnel remain informed and included in the ministry's developments. The intranet will also be utilized as the platform for the centralized improved management of vacation requests, sick leave, and other HR-related inquiries. This will empower our justice personnel with the information they need and improve the quality of service they experience. In addition, the Staff Bureau has been focused on enhancing the handling of complaints and will continue to improve this focus to ensure the communications feedback loop is utilized to make informed and better future decisions. Also within our staff bureau, as we know, they are giving much support to our placement committee, who is currently busy with the distribution of the offer letters. The Department of Judicial Affairs. This year, the Department of Judicial Affairs is focused on improving our existing legislations to ensure that the enforcement of our laws is more effective. The amendments to the National Ordinance of Administrative Enforcement are aimed at ensuring a more efficient compliance of rule of law and reducing the need for excessive court proceedings to execute law. This will be supported by drafting an implementation policy for the inspection division throughout the government apparatus. This will include this training needed that will ensure the effective and correct execution of the Administrative Enforcement Ordinance. The department has also included amendments to the General Police Ordinance to provide the legal basis for wheel clamps. This will strengthen the collection of outstanding fines owed. Also, we aim to mandate the enforcement of the ban on single-use plastic to the Inspection Division of the Ministry of TEAD, which will further aid in the greener of Sint Maarten. An electronic monitoring or ET policy with guidelines for this device use is in conditional release is also being developed. Furthermore, the development of new legislations in relation to implementation of the Advanced Passenger Information System, or RPS, will strengthen the strategic objective of our border supervision, as well as our tourism industry in the strategic marketing objectives. Additionally, new legislations are being developed for the governance of the crime fund, aimed at strengthening and safeguarding its use in crime prevention. This is supported further with the policy guidelines and the training of the staff needed to ensure the oversight and that control mechanisms are in place. Moving on through you, Mr. Chairman, I move on to the Police Department, or CAPSM. In 2023, CAPSM has a general focus on the strengthening of the organization through working with the Staff Bureau and the Placement Committee with the finalization of the placement process within the function book, the review and enhancement of internal protocols, the continued training and education program for our officers. CAPSM is also focusing on focus is being placed on enhancing public value through a collaboration between the Kingdom partners on the enhancement of crime prevention strategies, an increase in traffic controls, and ensuring safer road use. This will be supported by a public awareness campaign on traffic safety, as well as highlights of the community police officers, or CPOs, to ensure the public is aware of the role of the CPOs. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I move on to the Point Blanche Prison and House of Detention, or Harvey Bay. The prison management has been focused on strengthening its personnel and enhancing the existing facility. This is slated to be achieved through the refurbishment of the inmate recreation and medical facilities, the enhancement of reintegration and education program, rebuilding of the workshop and chapel, the procurement process of new beds and mattresses. Furthermore, the employee training agenda ensures enhancement of the skills of prison officers and support personnel. A keen focus is also being placed on the improvement of sick leave management, a key objective in 2023. The strategic alliance that the government of Sint Maarten has with UNOPS, supported by the Ministry of Interior and Kingdom Relations, will ensure that we achieve the end goal of a new and modern detention facility that will meet the needs of Sint Maarten with the proper facilities and operational spaces. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I move on to the Immigration and Border Protection Services, or IBP. The department is focused on strengthening border supervision and enhancing immigration services. This will be achieved through investments in strengthening the intelligence, enforcement, and investigation components of border supervision. The needed investment is in personnel capacity, building initiatives, and operational supplies will ensure effective enforcement and control. Further improvements to Grens Hospitium, or our holding facility, are also planned. Additionally, the slated improvements in the ICT system will modernize and enhance the quality of service. This will increase the efficiency of the paperwork process of the residency and admittance section of this department. In 2023, the implementation phase of our departure through the Automated Border Control, or ABC project, is slated to commence. This project will include a new system that will improve the experience of our visitors and traveling citizens. The Customs Department, through you, Mr. Chairman, as the department is responsible for monitoring and controlling the flow of goods in and out of Sint Maarten, increased controls of imported goods with the focus of enforcement of counterfeit laws continue in 2023. This is being supported by an ongoing awareness campaign of the existing counterfeit legislation. The division will also benefit from investments in capacity building through the action plan on strengthening of border supervision. The National Detectives, Mr. Chairman, through you, the department is currently prioritizing capacity building of its staff through the enhancement of operational leadership skills, basic detective training, and acting prosecutor training courses given to the staff. The department is also focused on public brand awareness to highlight their operations and the critical role they play in guaranteeing the execution of good governance principles while ensuring that the rule of law is adhered to by all civil servants. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I move on to the Financial Intelligence Unit. The FIU, also known as MART, has a strategic objective to strengthen its operation and prioritize enhancement in tackling financial and economic crime. The National Risk Assessment will aid in identifying the primary concern for money laundering and terrorist financing risks on Sint Maarten, whilst the slated investment in the ICT platform will improve the effectiveness of the department. Through you, Mr. Chairman, the Court of Guardianship. The Court of Guardianship, or COG, is a central authority for the protection of children and performs the duties of a central reporting agency for child abuse. In 2023, this department is prioritizing capacity building in both sections of the division, namely youth probation, child protection. So 1, youth probation, 2, child protection. This includes training enhancements in child protection methods, safety planning, risk management, and case management. In addition, the department intends to collaborate with SEIB or SEIS in the 2023 recruitment campaign for foster parents. This will ensure that our court-mandated children are placed in loving and caring home environments that nurture the child's development. The continued collaboration with UNICEF on the Child Resilience Project is also being prioritized. Mr. Chairman, through you, in conclusion, as we approach the end of regulating the ministry's personnel matters, we continue with our key priorities set, such as strengthening our border supervision and improving our detention facilities. Despite limited capacity and financial resources available to the ministry in 2023, the focus on strengthening the internal protocols and staff will enhance our effectiveness. As Minister of Justice, I stand with each agency of this ministry with their role and responsibility in carrying out enforcement measures to ensure for the safety and security for the community of Sint Maarten. Irrespective to the financial challenges and limitations we may have, together with the staff, both those on the front line and those providing administrative support, we are dedicated to continue accomplishing great achievements for the ministry and the country in our core and respective daily functions. And with that, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to present these opening statements.
Thank you, Minister Richardson. The next is Minister of Education, and I would like to have, you have a presentation, Minister?
Yes.
I would like to adjourn for 3 minutes for the PowerPoint to come up. Meeting adjourned for 3 minutes. Welcome back. I give the floor to the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports Affairs, Minister Samuel, to give some introductory remarks on the budget. Minister Samuel, you have the floor.
Thank you.
I would like to adjourn for 2 minutes. Meeting adjourned. Minister Samuel, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to you and the Griffier. Good morning to the members of Parliament. Good morning to my colleague ministers, PM. Good morning to those listening in the public tribune, those in the ministries who are following this meeting, and the public at large. Mr. Chairman, allow me to take this opportunity to congratulate the people of Sint Maarten tomorrow for the 375th anniversary of the Treaty of Concordia. Tomorrow morning, the commencement ceremony will take place at 8:30 a.m. in the morning on Concordia Hill or Marigot Hill, and all are invited. Mr. Chairman, I would also like to take this opportunity to wish the Molanas/Boncampo family my condolences with the passing of Jan, as I have always called him. And he was someone that I went to school with, and we have always had a good, relationship. And Mr. Chairman, I would also like to say congratulations to the Indian community on the celebration of their cultural moment. Mr. Chairman, I would like to now go over to the presentation of the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, and I have chosen to focus on the capital investment projects. So the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports priority areas are to improve a qualitative and sustainable educational system. The development of a legal and policy framework is prioritized, as included in the government governing program and country package for education joint action plan. To restore access to safe and adequate education, sport, and cultural facilities, and enhancement of the infrastructure also, including trust fund finance projects. To promote and protect the natural, tangible, and intangible cultural heritage and a strong shared cultural identity. Mr. Chairman, on this slide, you will see the capital investments for the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, the coverage of the Dr. Martin Luther King School playground for a total of $350,000. This project includes the building of a covered area on the playground of the Dr. Martin Luther King School, and can be found back in the policy priority of restoring access to safe and adequate education, sport, and cultural facilities, and enhancement of the infrastructure. This slide shows the ICT hardware and software for education department and public education, which consists of the purchase of digital tracking system software for bus transportation for the tune of $522,000, and an investment of 244,242 guilders for a network redesign and upgrade, which ties in with the policy priority to improve a qualitative and sustainable educational system. Mr. Chairman, here we will see the phase 1 of the expansion/renovation of the John Lamini Center, which is on the 2023 capital investment budget for 2 million guilders in the phase 1. Then, Mr. Chairman, we can see the upgrading of the Raoul Hilliard Sports Complex football field and athletics track, which is slated on the 2023 capital investment budget for the amount of $2,244,365. The investment amount for the football field is estimated at approximately $825,000, and the investment cost for the athletic track is estimated at $1,419,000 guilders and $419,937 guilders. This also ties into the policy priority of restoring access to safe and adequate education, sport, and cultural facilities, and enhancement of the infrastructure. Mr. Chairman, on this slide, we can see the completion of the construction of the Prince William Alexander School, phase 1. So this is the entire project layout, but only part of it is phase 1. And then, Mr. Chairman, on this slide, we can see the capital investment slated for NEPA preparation, and I would like to stress preparation for the construction and expansion of an administrative office, a student engagement center with cafe, a simulation lab for nursing program, expansion of the culinary and hospitality unit. It is important, Mr. Chairman, here to understand that this investment for NEPA is to prepare for these projects. I have been asked by a member of parliament, are these projects ready to go? And I want to be very clear to parliament that these projects are all in different stages of development, and ready to go is different for each project. Mr. Chairman, the following slide shows that the laptops, which I spoke about for the teachers and the schools, are here on Sint Maarten. The following slide, Mr. Chairman, shows that the lights for the John Cooper Hossa Lake Park have arrived, so they are here on Sint Maarten. And most naturally, putting them up is the next phase. Mr. Chairman, last year, May 2022, I announced that my proposal to allocate 1 cent per liter gasoline and diesel to the benefit of sports was approved by the Council of Ministers. Today, I wish to inform the honorable members of parliament through you, Mr. Chairman, that the project is still ongoing and that the funds derived will be earmarked for the cricket field, a multi-purpose sports auditorium, a swimming pool that conforms to the regulated dimensions for international competition, upkeep and maintenance of sports facilities, and most naturally to support clubs and their athletes. Mr. Chairman, here we can see on this slide the proposed improvement plan for the sports facilities in Cahill in collaboration with SZV and the Medical Center. So this area is being developed along with the tennis court, a full-size multi-purpose field for basketball, netball, volleyball, football, and hockey, as well as the integration and improvement of the current playgrounds. The ministry has focused on prioritizing the international standard swimming pool, which I mentioned also in the previous slide. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, members of parliament, through you, I would like to stress on the importance of the draft Budget 2023 for the plans of the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports. Considering that ministries were challenged with the issue of having to present a balanced budget for 2023, this of course restricted the plans which can be executed in 2023. Notwithstanding the challenges, the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports has set out to accomplish its goals, including the trust fund projects and the country packages. I thank you for your attention, and I await any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Samuel. I give the floor to the Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labor, Mr. Otley, to give some introductory remarks on the budget. Okay, we'll have to adjourn for 3 minutes. Meeting adjourned. Welcome back. Minister Otley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the public, excuse my voice. I sound like the Cookie Monster, but I use this opportunity to warn the general public that there is a flu going around, and I would use this time to tell you, enhance your immune system, stock up on your vitamin C's, D's, whatever it may be, and let us get through this flu. I'll keep this short and sweet as we presented during the CC. So I just added a few points. So of course, real quick, the key achievements that we had: the Pharmaceutical Cost Containment Program, Dutch Caribbean Health Alliance, indexation of the hourly minimum wage, home repair project, and elderly programs. You see here the overall comparison of the budget 2023 versus 2022. Now, while the budget is less, if you look at the actuals for 2022, it is actually less than what is projected. So the actuals are what is actually used. So the budget is just a projection. If we don't have the money in the coffers, then it's just numbers on a paper. So the Minister of Finance sat down with the Ministry of Versailles. We went over what we actually used and to see what we can execute realistically for 2023. Here again, we have some comparisons with fees, miscellaneous, work permits, ambulance fees, and you see the totals. We went through this in the Central Committee meeting as well. Here we have the expense per economic category. We have the personal costs compared between 2022, 2023, the subsidies, Social Security, health insurance, goods and services, total VSI costs for 2022 budgeted $57,530,958. Budgeted for 2023 is $55,961,918. Here we have the sickness insurance for civil servants is budgeted in 2022 for $35 million and now budgeted in 2023 for $32.5 million. Here we see the expense per economic category comparison. This is just a comparison chart. Here we have the actual allocations of budget, where sickness insurance for civil servants accumulate 37% of the ministry's budget, personnel costs 16%, subsidies 2%, social security and health insurance 34%, so goods and services come to 11%. Here we have the highlights of the expected expenses, $400,000 establishment of Port Health Services, $470,000 for hiring of 4 key essential personnel, $194,000 for the non-communicable disease plan, $300,000 for establishment of staffing for a registration system of healthcare professionals, $200,000 for improving the legislation, policies, and regulations of mental health care, $100,000 for improving legislation, policies, regulations for medical waste policy. Here we have highlights and expected expense $250,000 for consultancy fees for the non-communicable disease strategic plan, $205,000 for the youth vaccination dental program, $200,000 for the creation of a disease database for surveillance and following up on the NCDs and CDs and mortality, $150,000 to developing a structured reporting mechanism on communicable disease, which we learned is very, very important, especially we learned from COVID-19, $522,000 for the outbreak preparedness, $700,000 for home repair program, which we will roll out the next cohort real soon, $100,000 for ESF 7, community-based training, $100,000 for digitalization of crisis care program, $150,000 to update AOV legislation, including flanking measures. Highlights and expected expenses 3, $1,740,360 for transitional shelter program, which we'll explain a bit later more. Explain a bit more later on. $150,000 development of a legislation for rental subsidy, which we are working on. $140,000 for development of policy proposals in regards to illegal employment of foreign workers. $150,000 to conduct various workshops to educate the public pertaining to their labor rights. $49.5 million for civil servants and persons receiving medical aid, OZR. $6.5 million contributed towards ZV insurance for persons still insured but unemployed. And we have $6.8 million for financial aid. Here we have some major increases and decreases. The members of parliament wanted answers on some decreases and increases. So number one, the decrease of $700,000, and understand the decrease is based on actual figures of preceding years, which is around $550,000 a month, which is approximately 6.6 million per year. So and then number two, the increase in community development project and activities went from 500,000 in 2022 to 2.6. This is because the transitional shelter of 1.7 million was transferred from social development to community development, family humanitarian affairs. Also 700,000 home repair project for the elderly and empowerment project for specific community groups. Number three, under CPS, there's a decrease of 1.4 million under personnel vandalen. The 1.4 million was budgeted for CPS to support during the pandemic, and now that we are in the endemic stage, we found that these budgets can be cut. I would like to touch a bit on the T-shelter, which weighs quite heavy on the budget. However, the transitional shelter and rehabilitation program began April 1st, 2021, under the leadership of Minister Lee. It was established as a direct result of persons who are still in need of housing after Hurricane Irma. In 2018, of course, due to the urgency, there was no bid conducted, but the expense at that time was $149,429. In 2020, under Minister Panafleck, a bid went out, an open tender for this process, in which the Dr. J Foundation won and was reduced to $131,840. The T-shelter has been a success since its existence, have transitioned over 160 persons successfully into employment. Some policies and priorities we have from healthcare, public health awareness campaign for non-communicable disease, youth vaccination program, developing a structured reporting mechanism for communicable diseases, to establish a staffing registration system for healthcare professionals in line with international quality. We have as well digitalizing the inspection application system. We have the DCHA, as mentioned, the mental health care legislation, which is being worked on, the continuation of port health services to ensure safety in our country. Some community-based projects we have to develop community development program through an integral and neighborhood-oriented approach to carry out household assessment and identify the social economic needs of the population in order to better develop legislation to meet their needs. We have community and comprehensive care. We have the implementation of the social registry system as outlined and approved in the National Recovery Resilience Plan document. The ministry will maintain ongoing transitional shelter program like we just elaborated on. The development for legislation for rental subsidy is on its way. The development for legislation of an unemployment fund is also on its way. For labor, we have the development of policy proposals in regards to illegal employment of foreign workers, development of e-platforms to reactivate the council, which we spoke about with the Ministry of Education and Labor, the ROHA, to conduct various workshops to educate the public pertaining to their labor rights and enhancement. This is very, very important. Top priorities 2023, diabetic foot care program, after hours GP clinic and pharmacy, which will help alleviate some of the weight at the medical center, water collaboration project with the French side, which we elaborated on during the CC, legalization of the cannabis, the health levy, the BIC, to establish a structure to widen the pool of medical professionals, to amend the civil code defining under what circumstance finally can short-term contracts be used. Just some little insight on the cannabis, as we stated, it's a $17 billion industry. Forbes has realized that out of the $17 billion, $4.5 billion was driven through tourism. I would like to touch on the hospital I know it will come up during this budget, but however, am I satisfied with the hospital? No. Am I satisfied with the work that we were able to get done during my tenure? Yes. Am I responsible for COVID-19, inflation, the war in Ukraine, and previous hiccups with other contracts? No. But I am dealing with the hand I was dealt. And here you can see I did the best that I can do during my tenure. If we compare from 2016, that picture was actually taken the day before I was sworn in, April 20th, 2021. And from April to February 10th, we saw that we have progress. Again, is it the progress that we want? No. But we have managed to move. There was some information that we think that was sent in writing, but I think the general public needs to know. The amount of money granted to SMMC for the trust fund was $32 million. $25 million for the cost of construction of the new hospital and repairs upgrade. In 2018, $7 million was approved for construction of the new hospital in 2022. The original price of the hospital in 2016 was $61,950,000, including TOT. December 21st, construction price included adjustments of IRMA and variations went to $82,396,000. A total of $15,585,000 has been spent as for February 2023. What we need to add on this was the $2.1 million that was given to the contractor as an advance payment. A total of 2.9, for medical equipment, and advance payment can also be added to that. The original projected finish date for the St. Maarten General Hospital was supposed to be February 29, 2024. The new projected date for completion following the Fourth Amendment is set to be October 2025. Phase 2, transfer from the old to the new hospital. Phase 3, demolish partially the existing hospital and construct a main entrance and access that will be ready mid-2026. So phase 1, the main building, will be ready October 2025. After phase 3 of the construction contract, the contractor ends and SMMC will complete the project with the demolition of the existing hospital and create a parking lot. Some more information on the hospital. In order to complete the general hospital, an addition of $40 million was required. The justification for this settlement of $40 million, as negotiated per the end of September 2022, has been determined by comparing the estimates of additional costs to the significant market development following COVID and the war in Ukraine, as can be derived from the indexation of the published by Federal Reserve Economic Data, the FRED. Okay, Federal Reserve Economic Data can be used to substantiate these increases in pricing and construction for the new hospital project. SZV wage limit, we had some questions on that. As per August 2022, the SZV wage limit has increased from $67,816,000 from $67,800 to $120,000 per year. A significant increase of ZVOV premium was collected. An increase in the ZVOV premium collections average approximately $1 million monthly since the implementation of the wage limit increase. We have reached the end of my presentation. Look forward to any questions.
Thank you, Minister Otley. I would now look at Acting Minister of Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment and Infrastructure. Are you ready, or you need time for presentation? Minister is ready. I give you the floor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, again. On behalf of the Ministry of Rummy, I will start the presentation, keeping in mind that we went through the many details last week in the CC. Today we'll focus on the achievements, department objectives, priorities, and statistics, the budget 2023, and the closing remarks. For the achievements in 2022, we had the job mixer. The job mixer, which we believe was very, very, very successful in terms of how many persons came out. We had lines out of the door. Since the job mixer of the Ministry of Economy and Finance, we've already hired a few individuals already. And beyond that, the minister and the Ministry of Economy actually went to the Netherlands to continue the job search for key and vital staff. We believe also there they've also identified persons, and that process is ongoing. The car wreck removal as a tourist destination, we believe will be in the Ministry of Rummy, but also as a government, we are a tourist destination. And when we land on the island, and tourists land on the island, it should look clean, respectable, but not only for tourists, but for us as a population. And we also believe that we have to start to enforce the legislation and the laws that exist when it comes to car wrecks. In the meantime, though, we have started the process of the car wreck removal, not just removing the car wrecks, but also registering the VIN numbers, identifying the cars, because as an additional assignment from the Ministry of Finance is that we won't just start removing cars and taking accountability all the time as a government. The accountability will also be passed on to the owners going forward. So if you have not registered your car as stolen, if you have not done this, I would advise you to do this, because going forward, we will start to identify cars, and the bill and cost will be upon the owners of the car wrecks to be removed. Integrity chamber sessions. Given what has come out of the ministry over the last few years in Rummy, the minister thought it very important to have training sessions when it comes to integrity in the Ministry of Rummy. We haven't had these type of trainings before in the ministry. The first couple of sessions went very well, and the ministry plans to continue these sessions in 2023. The establishment of a building code. In 2023, Sint Maarten has grown as a country, not just in terms of members of parliament and going in from status of artist into our current status, but we've also grown in population size. I believe, honestly, Sint Maarten has grown economically and in population way faster than we believed many decades ago. With that being said, we've also outgrown our old building code. So it was very important to establish a new building code, and this building code has been established, and the ministry will also continue with trainings and workshops and so forth for architects, persons in construction and so forth, to be able to understand what the new building codes are, continue to educate the public also, so that we can start to apply these building codes. As the fact is that it isn't that we're not going to see more disasters again, it's just when we see more natural disasters. We live in a hurricane belt, not only hurricanes, but you see what we had in Turkey and so forth, earthquakes and so forth. So as we continue to build, this building code that we have now will continue to strengthen us and prepare us for the future of natural disasters. Cost cutting the wastewater treatment plant. Again, I am Minister of Finance and also acting of Rummy, from our perspective at the Ministry of Finance, we came in, especially during the pandemic, we decided, look, we have to start on areas where we can cut costs, including revenue generating. And one of the areas that the minister identified where we were wasting was at the wastewater treatment plant. We've saved, with a new proposal, close to between 600,000 and 800,000 gallons a year. The underground cabling project, this project continues in 2023. This will bring the country, the aim is to bring the country to 100% underground. at the last conference that the minister traveled to, I was happy to hear that Sint Maarten actually was way, way more advanced than other countries in the Caribbean, in the region, in terms of how many of our cables are actually underground, preparing us for a faster return after a hurricane or natural disaster. I saw after, for example, Hurricane Irma, how fast Belvedere and Ebenezer came on board in comparison to where I live, where we still had above ground cables. And I am happy though that our road now has also been put underground. So the country's sewage master plan. I heard in the CC one or two MPs talk about similar to what I said with the correct removal in terms of sewage, water on the roads and so forth. I know the minister, when he sworn in, actually was one of the first conversations he had with me in tackling the sewage issue in the country. We had meetings with the Ministry of VSR to start this process. So I believe the sewage master plan is also a key achievement going forward to be able to tackle our growing economy, our growing population, and managing our sewage. The renaming of the Carmel Festival Village. Within government, we believe in honoring our icons. Justin Arndal was an icon when it came to the Carnival itself, and we renamed the festival village after him. I did get notice yesterday from in the ministry now that with the current events ongoing for Carnival, that the name is still being used as Sint Maarten Festival Village or the Carnival Festival Village. And it's unfortunate that we're not using the name that we renamed it to. You know, we're not gonna say that we have the Clement Baker Square and then we have the event there, we can call it the MP Kuki Beljani Square, right? So I do believe in our efforts from the SCDF to educate the promoters and also the events that they themselves are hosting, that they put the right name of the building, of the village, which is the Justin Arndal Festival Village. So I hope that this message goes out and all promoters that host any events within the village, that they name it correctly. The housing, in terms of ERP1 and the support for the Ministry of Rummy, 500 plus homes have been repaired. In terms of the shelter upgrade and repairs, there's another program that the Ministry of Rummy supported the NRPB with. And upcoming, there's a housing project in Hope Estate. The end of next week, there will be a steering committee meeting on this. This is a project that both myself and the minister fought heavily for, and the prime minister fought heavily for, to get a housing project within the trust fund. It was not initially part of it. We fought heavily to get it inside of it. We thought that housing was a very important aspect for the country. And to date, what we understood from the team, it actually is turned out to be one of the nicer projects and more satisfying projects to do, and will be one of the more gratifying projects coming out of the trust fund. For the vision on housing, we plan to continue to stimulate home ownership. Also, in collaboration with the Ministry of Finance, we're looking at key areas how we could promote home ownership. From the Ministry of Finance side, we also look at the tax legislation part from a motion I presented as an MP, actually giving homeowners, first-time homeowners, the opportunity by waiving the 4% tax, creating sustainable, affordable housing. We're looking at social housing. In addition to that, we're looking at strengthening the institutional capacity of Rummy. I think the theme after Irma, or actually during COVID, and after, we realized that even more so the capacity at the government as a whole has to be increased. With the amount of projects that we want to get done and the amount of things that we want to get done, we don't have enough people within the different departments to execute. So we will continue to strengthen the Ministry of Rummy through trainings, recruitments abroad. And I'm also happy to mention that we have an approved by Council of Ministers commitment agreement, performance agreement with the Sint Maarten Housing Foundation. This agreement will enhance the Housing Foundation in terms of their financial capacity, their planning, and also bring it to a level that we can all be proud of. Department objectives, priorities, and statistics. Obviously, we've seen the road repair going on the island. I must say, I wasn't one that actually drove on Bush Road that much. As soon as the road was done, I drove on Bush Road all the time now. It feels very good to be driving that road now. This road repair program will continue. In addition to that, we are looking at ways between the Ministry of Rummy and the Ministry of Finance to be able to have a more structural road maintenance going on. So not that it's one-off and so forth, we're looking at ways of implementing actually between 2023 and 2024, a more structural road repair maintenance program. In addition to that, we have identified that just repairing main roads would not be the solution because, for example, if you look at in Coal Bay, Union Road, some other roads in Coal Bay, all the side roads that are aligned to the main roads that are still dirt roads are damaging the infrastructure. So we will have to now consider fixing a portion of side roads in key areas, right, to be able to continue to maintain the longevity of our main roads. That's another project that's also put in the CapEx of the Ministry of Rummy. In terms of spatial planning, as I mentioned before with the building code, spatial planning falls within that same category. We have grown as a country in terms of population size. Everybody wants to build, wants to own, and at the speed we are going, it just won't be possible to continue to build in the manner that we're building. In addition to that, ESGs are becoming more important. The environment, our social responsibility. So we have to build in ways that we consider our environment as an island, which we are in the Caribbean. So our green zones, right? How do we continue to have a balance between nature and living? And that all comes down to our spatial development strategy from 2021 up until 2030. So that will be a key factor going forward for us as a government. We're in the Department of Inspection. We had 1,072 inspections executed. We also aim to have a more modern Ministry of Rummy. So we're looking to, between 2023, to start to digitize these processes so we could better register where, who, what infractions were occurred, and how do we not just inspect and give and put building stops and so forth, but how do we prevent them from happening in the first place? If that comes through education, if that comes through awareness and so forth. We're also looking to directly link to the Department of Permits. We're also looking to be able to speed up the process so it doesn't give persons a reason to want to do something illegally, for example. So that's another area we're looking at, speeding up the building permits process. Also having support for the department. As the construction in Sint Maarten is growing, the limited amount of staff that we have there now, it just won't be able to cut it in terms of being able to execute, because it's not just a 1, 2, 3 process. The person, the department head and so forth, they have to really thoroughly go through these documents and make sure that everything is aligned. As I mentioned already, the policy department, implementation of a building code, zoning plans, and identifying protected areas like Little Key. Little Key would become a protected area based on the nature policy. In terms of Department of New Projects, finalization of the wastewater treatment plant for Coal Bay and KB, the completion of the Dutch Quarter sewage project, which we are every week dealing with as a government to try and finalize as soon as possible. upgrading of all the 14 roundabouts on the island, the realization of a parking in Phillipsburg. What we have heard from the business owners in Phillipsburg already is that the temporary parking where we have put the post office now, that alone has increased their business significantly, right? Right, MP Bajani? Through you, Mr. Chair. When we walk in front street and back street, all the business owners are mentioning how much that has helped, not only help with business, but also help with planning their drop-offs of goods to their different establishments. We look forward to actually having a multi-purpose parking on those two locations. We've also approved the demolition of the old government building, which will also then create new temporary parking in the meantime until we start the process of the new parliament building and the multi-level parking. Domain affairs, we see some statistics. In 2021, we generated about 6 million guilders. In 2022, a little less. But if you look at the line at the bottom, you see for 2023 already, just between January and February, we generated about close to 1.2 million guilders. And these were significantly, because of the efforts we did through the task force and the collection program that we're doing. In addition to the collection program, what the task force between the Ministry of Finance and VROMI, and I also want to make it very clear for the public, is that we're also looking at areas of persons that, say for example, filled in more land than was actually theirs. So they created basically new wealth, right, but was not registered. So we're also looking at GIS, cadastral and so forth, and we are going through the process of actually dealing with those persons also. As I mentioned before, the road patching, assessment of infrastructure, solid waste. For capital investment, we have a significant portion of the capital investment is coming to the Ministry of Environment, 48%. We haven't invested in our infrastructure, as I mentioned before, properly since more than a decade. And with this investment, we will be dealing with all the main roads, a portion of side roads, the Prince Bernard Bridge, the remaining parts of Dutch Quarter, and the sewage network. Opportunities. We've had from a few MPs here discussions on buildings and dilapidated buildings and just the overall look and feel of the island, especially in our capital. And that will come through the revision implementation of our aesthetics policy, right? You know, if you look at, let's say, Sabre, for example, you see that everything looks alike. If you look at some areas in Miami and so forth, how certain houses are designed and so forth, and the level that they have to stay and remain upkeep to, we will be looking at that and looking at introducing a beautification committee. The multi-purpose shelter and Hope Estate, that is where we contributed and facilitated, which will be financed by PAHO, Prime Minister, PAHO, the shelter, yes, by PAHO. The ministry was key in establishing with the government, making sure that this land was available so that building could be built. The review of departments and tasks by SOAB. Within the ministry, again, within the ministry, we believe in accountability. There were some concerns in members of parliament with a couple of projects, and it's not that we're going to put our head in the sand and hide. No, we take accountability for any questions or concerns. The reason why we brought in the Integrity Chamber to organize the trainings with the staff, but in addition to that, we've also asked SOAB to help support the ministry when it comes to bids and other financial matters. So we have now external support that will audit, support, and also help when it comes to bids. In addition to that, because I know, again, we will get a question in regards to the tender. Yes, the Ministry of Finance is working on the tender policy. In the meantime, we have organized trainings for staff for the tender policy, and we've also asked for support, again, external support when it comes to tendering in the meantime. Mr. Chairman, with that being said, I believe that being, again, both Minister of Finance and the Minister of Rummy, acting Rummy, that we have had a good collaborative effort in terms of identifying areas where we can do better, identifying areas that we say, we have this backlog for so long, the country cannot continue to move forward without getting this backlog fixed. And we can't move forward without proper infrastructure in the island, right? And we've built the foundation to have the infrastructure properly set up for the future. And I believe with this budget 2023, we will be making significant strides to having a Sint Maarten that we want to see, a Sint Maarten pre-Irma, but even more advanced. That'll be all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Acting Minister of Romy, Mr. Adwell Irion. The last presenter will be our Prime Minister, Minister of General Affairs. But before I move on to the Prime Minister, I would like to remind members of Parliament to speak, you'll have to physically sign the speakers list. And now I would give the floor to the Prime Minister. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, my fellow members of the Council of Ministers, the honorable members of Parliament, Secretary General, of course, members of all the support staff following this broadcast. As we know, it's much more than who's in this room that needs to do a lot of work to be able to make it possible, and I thank you in advance. To all the persons tuned in, listening and viewing, thank you for joining us via the various media, and thank you for your patience also with the technical difficulties we've been experiencing, and a hearty good afternoon to one and all. Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to add my condolences to those of my colleagues on the passing of Mr. Yanchi Bonkamper, known from a youth here on St. Maarten. To the family, much strength as you deal with this loss, as well as to the officer Thijs van Thijs, who has passed away as well, tragically. Much strength to the family, friends, and colleagues. There's much that we're dealing with as a country, of course, that also makes it more difficult. Tomorrow being March 23rd, 2023, Treaty of Concordia Day, a day we commemorate together with our northern partners. That will be a short celebration early in the morning, as was already elucidated by the Minister of ECYS. And of course, we will do our best to represent in that manner. Hopefully, some of what is presented today will clarify some of the ways in which we continue to collaborate. Mr. Chairman, it's an honor and a privilege. Oh yes, before I move further, I also, as a female leader here on St. Maarten, must commend the Honorable MP Angelique Rameau on the excellent execution of the Women in Leadership Gala and panel discussion. It was definitely an uplifting moment for women leaders who were present, and hopefully the youngsters who will be impacted by what follows as a result, as well as other women, because many of the women who attended, Mr. Chairman, came afterward to say they felt validated and learned a lot. So one of the main themes of that conference was to pay it forward, to continue to share your knowledge, your experience to bring up the next generation, or even crossways. It may not even be in the next generation, might be in your own generation, that women are empowered to take their rightful place equitably next to our males in leading this country. We believe that where women are, where decisions are being made, that women should definitely be at the table and in the room contributing as much as any male. Thank you for that opportunity, MP and for the honor bestowed. Mr. Chairman, it's an honor and a privilege to stand before you today as we gather to discuss the most critical aspects of our nation's governance, the national budget. A budget is, Mr. Chairman, is a projection of what we as a country would like to achieve and how we will do so based on our human as well as financial resources. As representatives of the people, it is our duty to ensure that every penny of our nation's resources is used effectively and efficiently to benefit our citizens and the proper functioning of the government's apparatus. As we engage in this debate today, Mr. Chairman, we must recognize the challenging economic circumstances facing our country and the world. We have faced unprecedented times over the past 2 years and are still in recovery. Therefore, our budget must reflect the urgency and seriousness of our situation. We must acknowledge the fact that our budget is not just about numbers and spreadsheets. It is about people. It is about the men, women, and children who depend on us to make the right decisions and allocate resources where they are needed the most. Of course, this must be done with strategic thinking, with evidence-based policy budgeting, and this must be done in a transparent and accurate manner. Therefore, we must approach this budget with a sense of responsibility, collaboration, and creativity. As culturally, we know in St. Maarten that we have been known to make $1 out of 50 cents. We must be willing to make the tough decisions, the tough choices, prioritizing our nation's needs, and work together to find whatever innovative solutions may be out there to the challenges before us. Not see everything we face as problems, but as opportunities which we have always been able to overcome, and now with advancing technology are even able to do so and have a reach to the global network out there. As we begin this debate, I call on each and every one of us to remember our duty to the people and approach this task with the highest level of respect, integrity, diligence, and dedication. We cannot afford to lose sight of our goals. Our aim must be to improve the lives of our citizens, promote growth and development, and to build a stronger, more resilient nation for future generations. I look forward to a productive and enlightening debate, one that will set us on the path for a brighter future for all our citizens. As had been mentioned before in our Central Committee, I did take out quite a bit, but this is what will be followed in the next couple of slides that we will be focusing on. The Ministry of General Affairs plays a support role for the entire organization. As such, the vision is to build a strong, unified, decisive country with a multi-pillar economy that will improve the confidence and trust of the government within the community, increase community well-being, and develop a cohesive and strategic government apparatus. To be able to do so, we will achieve the national vision. Achieve the national vision, the ministry has compiled a policy-based budgeting system which will enable us to achieve tangible results with strategic long-term ambitions and policy priorities. The ministry is managed by the Secretary General with a support staff and comprises of the following departments: Legal Affairs and Legislation, Interior Affairs and Kingdom Relations, known as BUC, Foreign Affairs, known as DBB, Public Service Center, also includes Civil Registry Department, Fire Department, and Disaster Management, as well as the Department of Communications, known as DCOM. In addition, the Resources and Support Services, DMO, also resides within the Ministry of General Affairs with the goal to effectively and efficiently render good service to our colleagues, clients, and vendors. And the 4 sections or divisions that fall within that are Records and Information Management, DIV, Facility Services, FZ, Personnel and Organization, P&O, Information, Communication, Technology, ICT. Also falling under the auspices of the Prime Minister are the Department of National Security, VDSM, the Secretariat of the Council of Ministers, as well as the Cabinet of the Minister Plenipotentiary. Lastly, it is also my responsibility to foster and grow good relationships with various independent advisory and consultative entities for which Secretariat services are provided within the budget. These advisory and consultative services are the Council of Advice, the Social Economic Council, Integrity Chamber, the Council for Education and Labor, General Audit Chamber, the Ombudsman, and the Organized Consultative Committee for Civil Servants known as the CCSU. In looking at our key achievements for 2022, I would like to focus on the launch, firstly, of our National Development Vision, which started in 2012 with government through the support of the UNDP, United Nations Development Program, embarking on a daunting journey to develop the first National Development Plan for St. Maarten. However, the precursor to such a plan would be to have a vision through inclusivity and encompass a lengthy process where the participation of the people of St. Maarten, effectuating social dialogue sessions, polling of the residents, stakeholder sessions, and public awareness of, for example, the Sustainable Development Goals. St. Maarten, like any other small island developing state, is faced with challenges. Challenges such as vulnerability to exogenous shocks and economic shocks, fragile land and marine ecosystems, sustainability, and the adverse effects of climate change, such as rising sea levels. We can face these challenges. However, this cannot be achieved unless we, and that is government, parliament, the public, private sector, civil society, as well as each individual citizen acting in unison. The National Development Vision gives you the opportunity to do so. So I encourage each and every one who has not yet looked into it to go online and peruse this document as it forms the strategic vision for our entire country. This is the first National Development Vision for St. Maarten, created by the people of St. Maarten, and therefore reflects a shared vision that depicts the future we, as a people, envision. It guides our development in a coordinated and combined manner, emanating inclusivity, and I want to continue stressing on that word, inclusion. It is our determination for intentional progress, and it now serves as the basis for the prioritization of our reforms and should permeate the planning, programming, legislation, and policy, not just of the Ministry of General Affairs, but all our ministries. Next, I would like to mention that, and not go into too much, that we did have the discontinuation, as was elucidated in the CC, of the Coho Kingdom law, moving towards the mutual arrangement that is close to finalization, as well as the removal of the salary cuts that were implemented as part of the agreements moving forward. Our trust fund projects, we continue to execute those under key infrastructure ones were mentioned by the various ministries, but I care to highlight the hospital project, the airport, the homes that have been repaired and reconstructed, schools, shelters, waste management, income support for those who were in need, entrepreneurship, training, as well as financing to get businesses off the ground, digitalization of various aspects of government. All these contributed under 4 components, which were: 1, strengthening of the institutional framework and operational capacity for recovery and reconstruction and mainstreaming of resilience in investments. 2, program management and administration activities. 3, project implementation support. 4, implementation of a recovery, reconstruction, and resilience program. We've also, as I mentioned before, started the process to do policy-based budgeting. I will, in a later slide, explain how it connects to the National Development Vision and others, as has been requested by Parliament. And we also see that we have moved forward in the establishment of the Advisory Committee on Slavery, Atonement, and Reparations, and moving forward with the MOU with Sint Maarten to recognize the unity flag. Further key achievements in 2022 or other highlights from the ministry are that within the, I think I went too far. Going the wrong way. I mentioned that the function books as well as trainings were executed for the fire department. The function book for the ICT department is also on its way to the CCSU, that we are quite proud of, and the restructuring of the rest of the Ministry of General Affairs will continue. There's continued cooperation with the Cos and Best Islands to be able to service the public, and within the Department of Communications, we've seen an upgrade of the St. Maarten radio to provide redundancy so that during any type of a disaster or storm, we are able to remain in communication, especially as part of the disaster management. And we have seen also the finalization of the media policy in 2023. Other highlights are securing funding in the amount of €671,569 for the 3 projects listed here: early warning system, the Office of Disaster Management, and disaster management in general, as well as the single-use plastic project. So these 3 projects, we're very happy to be able to start, and we will be seeing the rollout during 2023. These were all under the EU Resembit projects aimed at building resilience and reducing the negative impacts on our environment while protecting our marine biodiversity. During 2022, also while in continued recovery, as Prime Minister, I had the opportunity on several occasions to represent St. Maarten as a small island developing state at the international level, bringing awareness of the status of St. Maarten, the unique status we have within the Dutch Caribbean, and our plight of not having access to concessionary financing and development funds for the needed achievement of the SDGs, especially those related to climate change and sustainable development and the preservation of our environment. This awareness has assisted us in negotiations and discussions with our Dutch Kingdom partners, and as we move forward with our discussions on financial sustainability in the current talks about the way forward with our loans, as well as in our ability to access funding in the Netherlands, the EU, and internationally, which was previously not possible and available to us as islands within the kingdom. Participation in high-level conferences such as EarthX, HLPF on the SDGs, the United Nations General Assembly, where we were able to speak on the same types of topics. We are now focused on funding, early warning systems, several women roundtable conferences, as well as how to secure financing as SIDS through related to climate change, among others, afforded St. Maarten a seat at the table as a vulnerable small island developing state where policies are actually being written, where they are now taking into consideration that there are SIDS like us that exist and are connected to the EU while not being able to receive the needed funding for the developmental projects. The priorities of the ministry moving forward, Mr. Chairman, is utilizing the SG and policy platforms for the integration of the National Development Vision, reform measures, and all the other projects that we have ongoing. And I will show in a follow-up slide how these are actually connected. We will see here that under the implementation of the EU Resembit projects that we have early warning systems, as I mentioned before, at €304,606, the Office of Disaster Management, €119,091, and the single-use plastic at 247,872 euro. The Corena project, I didn't mention during my slide because it falls within the Ministry of VROMI, but it's very important as it is the Coastal Resilience Needs Assessment to the tune of 633,692 euro in collaboration with the Nature Foundation, which seeks to enhance capacity of VROMI to create evidence-based policy development and increase knowledge and willingness of the public to engage in sustainable practices. This is, of course, highly related to the single-use plastic project, so we can't only say, stop doing this, we have to actually change the mindset and ensure that the policies are there at the VROMI level as well. Other projects are the B-Envelope Shelters project, which was just mentioned by the Minister of Finance. Technical assistance is being rendered also to the different ministries for shelter, relief, and mass care, and also the one for PAHO. This one was to the tune of 600,000 euro, and shelter, which is being implemented by PAHO, is 6,350,000 euro. As mentioned, Mr. Chairman, a question that came up during the Central Committee meeting was how is it all connected? The connections between the National Development Vision or reforms and budget. If we look on this slide, it was extrapolated from the NDV, one of the later pages. It shows the NDV theme and its sub-theme, in this case, a safe, secure, decisive, and independent nation. And sub-theme St. Maarten is safe, secure, and just. One of the goals it touches is goal 18, where national security measures, improved national security measures are in place to protect the lives and safety of the people of St. Maarten. The reform measure that we connect to that is the one on disaster risk management policy under A5. And one of the projects under the trust fund is the Office for Disaster Management. And you will see under the SDGs, the list of SDGs that are connected to this. SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities, 13, Climate Action, 14, Life Underwater, 15, Life on Land, and 17, Collaborating for the Goals. In our budget, or in our execution, we will see that the disaster risk management policy, the Department of BOC is working together with the technical assistance with that project, as I just mentioned. This is Resembid EU funded. However, within government's own budget, 2023, this draft covers the payments for the CRIF, which is the insurance related to disaster management. And the early warning system also funded via the EU to the tune of 304,606. A second example would be ICT. And I apologize that some of it has rolled over. Under the NDV, a united and compassionate society, St. Maarten has a strong foundation, as well as 3, a safe, secured, decisive, and independent nation, that St. Maarten is effectively and decisively governed. 2 goals from the NDV come up there: empowered communities and providing efficient public services. Under the reform measures, under the trust fund, we see the Digital Transformation Project, DGTP, which is rolling out, of which 900,000 has already been allocated. The total fund for this is 12 million. And under the trust fund, on the government's draft budget, we see that CapEx for this year of 1.750 thousand, which is to go towards needed equipment for ICT and telecom hardware. And the revamping ICT is under the reform measure B11, which is to bring the necessary changes to the ICT department structurally. And currently, ICT has 5 technicians that are being funded via this as well, to able to assist them in the rollout. I would also like to note that policy-based budgeting is the instrument used to ensure and monitor all our policy measures and are directly related to budget amounts. For example, you will see that what I have here mentioned, that the NDV goal, efficient public services, falls within our policy-based budgeting impact number 4, which are that operations are effective and efficient and is reflected in the budget to the amount of 42 million guilders, which is 53% of AZ's budget. So we were able to look through the entire budget and come up that it was 42 million of our budget being spent on making our services more efficient and effective. And this was presented more elaborately in the last presentation for the Central Committee. Quickly, I'll run through some other actions we're taking to make the organization more efficient and cost-effective, upgrading the parking lots to 24-hour automated services. This will definitely see an increase. Address the outdated leases and fees. These haven't been done for quite some time. This was discussed during our Central Committee as well. And addressing personnel and operational matters, as well as optimizing facility services to be more effective and efficient, while, as I mentioned before, reorganizing the ICT services of government. I go to the financial picture. For the Ministry of General Affairs, we have expenses, 79,191,658, with the income at 3,003,000. Our capital expenditures, as mentioned before, 2,290,600, which comprise of upgrades for the ICT in 1,750,000, and vehicles for the ministries, for more than one ministry, 540,600. We did see a small increase, which is generated sorry, I think that's in the next slide. Right. The expenses per economic category, we see that there is a small increase, about 3.36, higher compared to 2022, which represents 16% of the total government's budget. The budget accounts that created this increase are namely the increase in the disaster budget, as was discussed, to cover CRIF for 2023, which we had to take over from the NRPB Trust Fund, to the SLAs and contract budget at facility services, as we continue to strive for more efficiency and effectiveness in our financial management, and 3, funds that were paid into the postal services to ensure that we could aid them in securing local postal services as required by law for the people of the country. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, I go back to what was stated in the beginning, what was stated in our Central Committee meeting, and what I continue to state. We as a country are striving to be more strategic and efficient, as well as effective in the execution of our tasks. The Ministry of General Affairs aims at ensuring the support, proper support to the entire government organization, as well as giving great service to the people of St. Maarten, ensuring that it is optimal. With our national development vision in place, we will continue to work towards a cohesive plan on the way forward, connected to our reforms, identifying the needed resources, both human and financial, and the needed mindset change of we can do itness. And we will see continued progress and development, Mr. Chairman, within the organization, which will have a direct positive impact on St. Maarten and her people as a whole. We'll continue during the year to monitor our income and revenue streams and make the necessary amendments should the expected increases be realized, as was discussed. We'll continue to, the cohesion that we strive for, Mr. Chairman, is attainable. And I hope that the members of Parliament can see the role that they play in this regard. We are in a time of globalization, so we must be able to collaborate internally to optimize collaborations that we want to do externally to our northern neighbors, to the Caribbean region, as well as to the rest of the world as we continue to build this great nation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I trust that the information provided has been clarified from Central Committee to today, And should there be any further questions, that I'd be prepared to answer those. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs. Looking at the time, we have come to like lunch break. I would request members to have a lunch break till 2 p.m. and return back. 2:15 p.m. Meeting adjourned till 2:15 p.m.